Right now, millions of children wake up every single day not to the sound of a school bell, but, to the roar of factory machines. Today, we're unpacking the systemic roots behind World Day Against Child Labor, which is observed every year on June 12th. Now, it's so easy to hear these massive global statistics about child labor and just kind of disconnect, right? The scale is just overwhelming. But behind every single one of those numbers is a human story. So in this explainer, we're going to look at the systemic trap of this global issue through a narrative inspired by real-life realities, specifically the story of a young boy named Ayaan. Let's map out exactly how children fall into these traps in the first place, and more importantly, how targeted community support can actually pull them out.
One day, I will go to school, too. That simple, beautiful dream belongs to Ayaan. He's this cheerful 10-year-old boy living on the outskirts of a really busy city. He lives in a mud brick house where the roof leaks literally every time it rains. But despite the poverty, he's just a happy kid. He loves drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick, and every morning he watches all the other kids in their neat little uniforms and colorful backpacks heading off to the village school. And he tells his mom that one day he'll be right there with them. This really sets the stage for our journey today, figuring out what happens to a dream exactly like this when the system completely fails.
So let's get into part one, a stolen childhood.
The systemic trap of poverty acts like a brutal domino effect. First domino, financial instability. Ayaan's dad was a daily wage laborer. That means some days he brought home money and other days, absolutely nothing. Then a sudden crisis hits. Right when Ayaan turns 11, his father falls seriously ill and can't work for months. That triggers the third domino, the rapid depletion of their tiny, tiny safety net. And finally, the unavoidable consequence. Ayaan is forced to go work in a city workshop just so the family can afford basic food. See, this wasn't a choice his parents made lightly. It was a desperate survival mechanism, triggered by a complete lack of healthcare and financial savings. Inside that workshop, the reality is incredibly gritty and just entirely unsafe. Ayaan was hired instantly. Why? Because even though he was small, he could still carry heavy bundles, clean machines, sort materials, the whole shebang. His shifts ran from before the sun even came up until long after it went down, and the physical toll was massive. His hands would literally bleed from handling rough materials, and he developed this chronic cough from the unventilated, dust-filled air. To make the danger even more apparent, another child worker there, a boy named Bilal, suffered a severe hand injury from a malfunctioning machine. And guess what? There was no doctor, no compensation, just a bandage, and a strict order to get right back to work. Which brings us to part two, systemic causes of labor. Get this. Directly across the street from Ayaan's dangerous, exhausting, dusty workshop stood a school. During his lunch breaks, Ayaan would look out the window and watch children playing football under the trees, studying, actually learning from their teachers. It's an agonizing contrast, isn't it? On one side of the street, children are being physically broken down by labor, and on the exact opposite side, children are being built up by education. So it makes you ask, why? Why do some children get to learn while others absolutely must work? Ayaan's own internal monologue brilliantly bridges his deeply personal struggle with a massive systemic societal failure. Because child labor isn't just about missing out on an education. It's the outright theft of health, of safety, and basic human hope, simply because of the economic class a child happens to be born into.
Let's move to part three, the role of community.
Okay, so how do we actually solve this? Well, it requires a multi-pronged community intervention. You can't just swoop in, quote-unquote, rescue a child and walk away. It doesn't work like that. Community workers, like a child welfare advocate named Sarah, organize meetings with local leaders and parents to educate them on the severe physical and mental harms of child labor. But here's the thing. Education isn't enough if people are literally starving, right? So when parents push back saying they desperately needed the income their kids brought in, the organization partnered with local authorities to actually provide financial assistance to those vulnerable families. You have to address the root cause, which is poverty, if you want to shift parental attitudes effectively. And this multi-pronged approach, it leads to a huge, pivotal shift. Ayaan's father finally said, "We will find a way." Now, he didn't just magically change his mind out of nowhere. He changed his mind because he attended those community meetings and learned about scholarships and support programs. For the first time in his life, he realized he actually had a real choice. By providing a systemic safety net, the community empowered him to look his son in the eyes, apologize for the sacrifice the boy had made, and firmly commit to getting him into a classroom.
Now for part four, from labor to advocate.
Ayaan's life trajectory is just an incredible journey of sheer resilience. At 10 years old, as we saw, He's just a village child dreaming of school. By 11, tragedy strikes, and he becomes a child laborer in a harsh city workshop. But then, once he's finally placed in a community education program during his teenage years, he becomes a fiercely dedicated student. At first, he could barely read or write complete sentences, but he used the exact same gritty determination that helped him survive 12-hour shifts in that workshop to excel in his studies. And finally, into adulthood, he transforms into a human rights advocate, traveling to villages and cities to protect the rights of other children. It's a real game changer.
Let's look at the big picture in Part 5, Breaking the Cycle Together.
Make no mistake, ending child labor is a massive collective fight. It cannot be the responsibility of just one single person or one welfare organization. Governments absolutely must enforce labor laws. Businesses have to step up, commit to ethical practices, and flat out refuse to hire children. Schools, they must remain accessible and affordable for everyone. And communities have to support vulnerable families financially way before a crisis forces a child into a factory. If society as a whole ignores these systemic problems, the suffering simply continues. We really have to work together on this. Ultimately, World Day Against Child Labor serves as a global reminder of fundamental rights. Every single child deserves a safe childhood. They deserve quality education, good health, and absolute protection from exploitation. And above all, they deserve the freedom to just dream about their future without the crushing weight of poverty dictating their day-to-day survival. Child labor literally steals that potential.
I want to leave you with this final, truly powerful thought. Children belong in classrooms, not workplaces. This is the exact slogan Ayaan delivered in a speech to a massive audience of government officials and journalists on June 12th as an adult advocate. It is such a profound, resonant takeaway. We have the power, through education, compassionate support, and collective systemic action, to break the cycle of poverty. So I ask you, as we wrap up today's explainer, what role can you play, whether in your own community or through the businesses you support, to ensure that the children across the street are holding books instead of tools? Thanks for joining me, and keep learning.